Hello everybody, this is Whitey the Wizard. My sound is probably not that good, so I'll have to improve that eventually. First thing you need to know is I'm not really a wizard, and nobody actually calls me Whitey. But my hair is white, and I have some amazing things to show you, so let's get started. First thing I want to show you is that I've been collecting Native American artifacts, like this one here. Let's see, is a little, probably a little shovel, a little spade, and this one here, there's a little notch in it, a little bigger, also probably a shovel for digging, or maybe probably an axe like that, tomahawk type thing. And then we have a more of a, something like this, which is more like a battle axe, probably, and could be used both ways. So, in the process of discovering these artifacts, I came across some other things that were very interesting. One of them is this stone right here. Now this stone is amazing. As far as effigy stones go, this one is in a class by itself, because literally will interact with the cell phone in a way that when you are looking at it, you can see images that come up in different colors, and they look like paintings on a wall. It's very difficult to photograph this effect, but the effect is very real, I assure you. I do have a video on my page here that sort of gives you the idea, but trust me, in real life, this right here is an incredible rock. Now, you ask yourself, how is it a modern cell phone can interact with a sculpted piece of rock? Well, there's a few things I discovered. One is that the rocks that are carved in the shape of things are called effigy stones. And effigy stones, by definition, are not technically considered artifacts, which means that you can collect them anywhere on public land. So, in that matter, you can, like I said, you can discover them just about anywhere. But the fact that they are not artifacts, the reason they're not considered artifacts is because universities and scientists did not know how they were made. And since they can't determine how they're actually made, they're not considered artifacts. Well, I can tell you something. I think I have a clue to the mystery of how these were made. And in the process of me looking for all these Native American artifacts, like here's another one, it's a tomahawk axe head, I discovered some very unusual things. One of the things I discovered was that on almost every rock I could pick up in a certain area, there was the image or the face of a gorilla, or an ape, or an ape man, gorilla man, something of that sort. Now, there's no gorillas in North America that I'm aware of. Perhaps in ancient times there were, but I think there's a much different answer to that question of how these rocks were made. And I think that answer has more to do with extraterrestrials than people realize. people are looking for artifacts, they're looking for images of animals, they're looking for images of Native Americans, but they're not looking for images of alien greys, of Bigfoot. If they were, they would discover that there's quite a few of them. And I have one here that is really quite incredible because every facet of it is sort of an alien face, possibly from Atlantis. You can see almost looks like it has seaweed on his face. And the most fascinating thing about these is no matter what direction you turn them, you can discern different images. And to have that type of foresight when you're creating something, to know that if you carve one side, it's also going to create something this way, this way, this way, and every other way, is really deep thinking, really thinking ahead. So I even discovered that, once I discovered that these effigy stones had images of gorillas and aliens, extraterrestrials, I started looking at all stones a little differently. And even a stone like this piece of coal, it looks like an ordinary piece of coal, is actually an extremely complex sculpture. It might be difficult for me to prove right at this moment from the way you're viewing it, but under the right light, this becomes an amazing work of sculpture. And every crack, nook, cranny, scratch, crevice has significance in the sculpture that's being created. It's really quite remarkable. So, rocks have quite a history. And there's something else I discovered about rocks that's very interesting. The book I'm reading from is called Awakening the Dream by David Wilcox. And in one section, he's referring to an Illuminati file that was discovered, and there was a box that they needed to hide, and I'll just read what it says. The weirdest thing we found in the box, however, was a description of something they called the spirit of the rock. Various photographs of rock outcroppings were taken. You could see what appeared to be a human-like face. They apparently believed this was not just an optical illusion, but an actual manifestation of a spiritual consciousness that had formed in the rock. The document said that once this entity occupied the rock, it would naturally erode the surface in a way that formed a noticeable face for those who knew what they were looking for. They also claimed to be able to connect with these spirits. I wasn't sure if I believed any of that, other than something you could easily come up with while you were on an LSD or psychedelic trip, but it was certainly an interesting story. So the author doesn't actually believe this is true, the spirit of the rock, but apparently, according to him, it was in a secret Illuminati file. So, I'm here to tell you that the spirit of the rock is a real thing. And since I started my investigation, somehow I've been given the special talent, we'll call it, of being able to photograph liminal beings. Now the interesting thing is, I don't see them with my eyes. Sometimes I understand that they're there, and there's a reason. I can get into that later. There's certain clues that I've learned to recognize. But most of the time, if I take a picture, anywhere from 2 to 3 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, the photograph will have images of liminal beings in it. I got this talent for being able to do this once I started really looking into these rocks. There's one rock in particular that really put the icing on the cake. Well, there's two of them. This one here, this little one that looks like it's almost like the shape of a heart, is really incredible because when you photograph it, you literally can get a three-dimensional look. Now, I've seen other people discussing effigy stones on YouTube, and they talk about this three-dimensional effect also. Scientists don't understand it, people don't understand it. This is some serious technology, okay? Be able to put that into a rock and have it react with a modern cell phone camera, which I can tell you does pick up more light than the human eye, a broader spectrum, and some more than others. I don't know the specific details. I'm still looking into it. Maybe one of you experts out there could tell me. But the fact that a rock like this can interface with a modern cell phone tells you something about who made this rock and who put the information into it, because these rocks are holding information. Now, not only that, but this one here, which is obviously just looks like an axe, you know, and you can always see profiles of faces. There's always multiple faces on these things all the time. And of course it's subject to interpretation, but nobody's going to argue that this is probably an axe, a battle axe or something of that sort. But the interesting thing is, when I photograph the back of this rock, and then I put it under a photo app and I blow it up so I can look at the image, it literally looks like the map of some kind of strange planet or something. I mean, literally, these rocks are encoded with information. And everyone out there who has effigy stones should try that, because you can literally find out so much more about history by doing this. And even new rocks become effigy stones, I discovered. Like this one here, does not look like anything special. It just looks like a regular rock that you would put next to a drainage ditch to drain water, typical black stone. But upon closer look, first of all, you can see it's the shape of a pyramid, which is interesting. But on this side, I don't know if you can see it, there's the actual face of a type of gorilla type thing, and it has like a pendant or something, and then there's all these designs here and all this stuff. Maybe you can't see it all, but this is not an old stone. This is a newer stone. So effigy stones are not necessarily old once you understand the principle here. And the principle has to do with consciousness. Higher consciousness uses stones. No, I don't know if I can say it like that, but higher consciousness definitely is involved in the making of some of these. Now here's a perfect example. See this stone? White stones are supposedly, I've heard, have more colors, are very important to Native Americans. But this stone here, if you look carefully, it has the face of basically what looks like an extraterrestrial with a big head and the mouth. Then on the side, there's actually a snake built in, almost like this is a stamp. It almost feels like a stamp of some kind. And then on this side is this kind of face of like a fish thing. Now, when you start looking at things in the light of being an extraterrestrial face or an object, or a Bigfoot looking face or an object, or possibly from Atlantis, also the reptilian factor and the shape-shifting. You start looking at things in the light of those things, you'll find your effigy stones, the meaning of them starts to change. Um, a lot of them, you know, they say Native Americans told stories with the stone, so the whole story will be encompassed in the stone. I think that's also true with these extraterrestrials. And here's an example of something interesting. This stone I found down by a river. If you look at it, it almost looks like there was something here, and it feels perfectly fine in the hand. And it looks like a medallion of some kind, like possibly it hung from the neck, from the top, maybe hung from the neck. And then when you try to see what this image is, the closest I've come under certain light is you see what looks like some type of Bigfoot creature holding like a sheep or something. And that's only one way. I'm still working on deciphering it because it's very worn out from the water, but you can tell that it's like a medallion or something. So the real icing on the cake is this baby right here. This baby tells stories that Native Americans are not going to be telling, because it has the face of a reptilian on one side, and it has all these alien faces all over the rock. But more than that, more than just alien faces on every different angle. Like here's a profile, you know, here's a profile. No matter how you turn it, you can find another one, another one, another one, you know, partially. But also, all these things on here, and if you even look, there's even a line. See that line right there? I think that line is basically telling where these are from, like what star system. It goes from there to here. And, you know, that may sound far-fetched to some people, but if you could see this thing under the right light, well, I do have a video up there that shows it, but there's a lot more investigation needs to be done, because this rock really has stories to tell. And I'll be explaining more about that as I study it more. But the point of this video, the main point is to tell you that the spirit of the rock is a real thing. Effigy stones are not only old, but they're new. And the reason they're new is because extraterrestrials that land, they remain invisible, but their consciousness affects the environment around them because they are higher consciousness than we are. So once you understand what to look for, you can recognize the trees, the rocks, the entire environment will change when there's an extraterrestrial presence. And it will become noticeable when you begin to open up your eyes. My eyes became open from studying these rocks, because I got to the point where there was technology that was impossible to explain. There's no caveman, paleolithic person who's going to be able to engrave three-dimensional images of dinosaurs on every facet of this rock. No matter which way you turn it, you can find images of things, creatures that have not walked the earth for millions of years, along with creatures from space, creatures from underwater. There's literally images on here that will prove extraterrestrials are real. On this rock right here, but only under the right light. And I do not know if that has something to do with the person also. I'm not positive, but I know that it's very difficult to photograph the effect. And so I can tell you about it, but trying to show it to you is almost like I gotta have you here next to me to show you. But I'm still working on it. I've been trying different color lights. You know, I got big flashlights. I got blue lights. lights, and, all these different things that I'm trying to do to show you that the technology involved in this is beyond the possibility of any Native American, any paleo, whatever, early man, anything like that. It is impossible. It just does not make sense. Okay, now certainly some effigy stones were created by Native Americans, I have no doubt. But even those, I bet you, if you photograph them up close with your cell phone, and then take that image, put it in a photo app, and blow it up, what you will see on those Native American stones will be beyond anything that you can actually even believe. It's hard to believe that it's even real, but it is. Now, in my eyes, it's pretty strong proof of extraterrestrials, but we'll leave that up to you. And for now, that's my first edition of the Wizard Files. I have a lot more to talk about. As you can see, I'm suffering from a serious case of Morgellons disease. You see it all on my skin. That's a whole nother story. We'll be talking about that. I'll be talking more about these rocks and a lot of other things I want to talk about. So subscribe, like, and help me out, because I really want to solve some mysteries and share my information with the world, because you won't hear this anywhere else. The spirit of the rock is real. I see it all the time in my photographs. So with that, good night and happy Halloween.